Hi there. Welcome to the Raven's Call. My name is Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Gothi of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I'd like to welcome you to the show. If you're new to the show, this is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, things that strike my fancy. Sometimes they're more of the esoteric side of things. Sometimes they're more pragmatic. Sometimes it's spiritual, religious, blah, 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 blah. Go back and check the back catalog to get kind of an idea of what's going on. I guarantee you, if you're interested in heathenry, there is something in the list there that should be of interest to you. Whether or not you find value in it, well, that's up to you. So, today's episode is kind of a special one for me. You know, we talked before, the last episode, episode 50, was kind of a retrospective, plus some of my backstory and my history and stuff like that. This episode we're going to delve into and start what I hope to turn into. Don't hold me to it, we'll see. Depends on how you guys respond to this, but what could be my Rune series, okay? The depth and breadth of the Rune series depends on your interest and whether or not you guys are down with the way that I do the runes, okay? So, first I'm going to talk a little bit about runes in general, and then I'm going to take a few minutes and play with an experiment on my rig to see if I can show you my rune set that I've built myself. And then we'll go from there. I'm not going to get into the specific interpretations on runes as of yet. I'm also not going to get into some of the specifics with regards to like bind runes and things like that. May touch on some generalities. But for the most part, we're going to stay pretty broad to begin with. We'll get into some of the more specific stuff later on. So before you start asking questions like that, no, we'll get there, okay? I want you to understand where I'm coming from first, okay? So, here's the deal. I am not going to go through and explain to you guys the history of the runes, okay? I'm not going to go through and say the runes came from here, the runes came from there, this is the historical basis for the runes, things like that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because it's been done. It's been done a million times. There are some great videos out there. Jackson Crawford's alone gives you some tremendous information about both the linguistic use of the runes as well as some historical basis for the runes. I will say that I use the Elder Futhark very specifically, and I do use them for divinatory purposes. I can hear all of the hardcore recons clicking off on the channel right now. They're like, nope, 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 nope. I get it, guys. I totally get it. We don't have hard evidence that the runes were used for divinatory purposes in olden days, in arch-heathen days. There are some references to runic uses for magical purposes, things like Egil Saga, but that seemed to be more along the bind rune kind of things, the magical, willful projection of energies into an outcome to twist weird to their benefit. In this specific instance, in Egil's saga, it was healing runes that some local yokel had done for a girl and actually made it worse. So Egil scratches those out and creates new runes that do have the desired effect because he was something of a runester. Vidki, which is a modern word as far as I'm aware. I actually haven't traced the etymology on Vicky. I just haven't seen it in the old stuff. I've only seen it in the new stuff. So I kind of assumed that it's new. I need to go back and vet that and figure out where the term Vicky actually first came up. But it's a term that's commonly used for a practitioner of runic magic or efforts and things like that. So anyway, the use of the runes, I realize, like I said before, is not well attested as far as divinatory purposes, but it is for magical purposes, okay? However, let me talk a little bit about divination and how I see divination and what divination is based on my research across multiple different faiths and practices, as well as looking at the lore and the types of divination that were used within arch-heathen practices, Northern European practices, Viking Age practices, and beyond, you know, further back, further forward. Here's the deal. Divination is the process of utilizing energies from the other side to be able to answer questions or gain insight. Now, divine, as far as the term goes, to ask the gods and goddesses for answers. Yeah, okay, that's part of it, but it's not all of it. A vast majority of the time, actually, divination is done by trying to contact spirits and seek information. But that's in the spirit contact form of divination. The runes I find to be a different deal. In image-based or symbol-based divination systems, I find that what it actually is a physical medium that a person can interact with in order to more keenly utilize their own personal insights, pattern recognition, to read the weird around them. That's what I see divination is doing. You know, in the spirit context of divination, you're really contacting spirits and asking a question. I don't really call that divination so much as I do, and I'm not sure what I would call it, communing with the spirits, the Veitir. But as far as divination goes, as far as casting lots, casting runes, tarot cards, oracle cards, scrying, fire watching, stargazing, all of these things are used to somewhat focus the powers that are already there in the mind. Okay, they allow you to bring to bear all of the skills that you already have, pattern recognition being the largest of them, and looking from the outside in at a problem to be able to utilize everything that you have to come to the answers that you need to. It gets you to look at things from a different side of things, and it also kind of taps into a different part of your spirit. It's like to look at it with your soul instead of with your mind, and to let all of those pieces work together. Read the weird around you to be able to discern patterns in weird, what's going to happen, what could happen, likely happen, because I don't believe the future is set. I believe it's constantly in flux. The future doesn't exist yet. Only the now exists, and everything that ebbs into the well sinks away. Here is where we are. Anyway, that got deep there for a second. Runes, just like any other divinatory tool, are only as effective as the individual that is using them. And that's not to say how well you know the runes, how well you know the interpretation of the runes, as far as like what everybody has written in a book somewhere, whatever. That's not the point. The point is, how well do you know yourself? How well do you trust your own gut and your own insight? And how well can you get your soul and your mind all speaking together? The different aspects of your soul, and pulling from these different sensory inputs to read weird around you and be able to find out what it is you need to find out. Divination is bringing out that inner insight and putting it into work, which is why you can do one runic reading and 6 different people have 6 different interpretations. It all depends on how good that person is at recognizing patterns and understanding behavior, understanding the human psyche, understanding the laws of physics, nature, and all that stuff. There's a lot of things that go into predicting outcomes, but similarly, the understanding of humans. If you're doing like a reading for someone and what's going to happen for them, understanding psychology helps a lot. It's not absolutely necessary, but it does help with the pattern recognition to understand some of the root issues that go along with it. Now, I will say that I like the runes in particular as far as a divinatory tool goes, and I've used many over the years, largely because I find them to be organic, very, very organic, because I do not use spreads. Those of you that do divination stuff will understand what that means. Anybody that's done tarot cards, or that's done oracle cards, or has done rune spreads, there's a difference. A spread is when you specifically draw a lot, a card, or whatever, and place it into a specific position that is codified to mean this within the confines of this problem. Within this scenario, this position means this. This is the root of the problem. This is where it's coming from. These are the interceding variables, and this is the projected outcome if all blah, 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 blah. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. All right? There's nothing wrong with creating a framework within which to use your gift of, it is a gift. It's a gift of pattern recognition. It's a gift of insight. It's a gift of the sight, the insight. So, and trust me, some people are so gifted with this that they can see logical outcomes, predictive outcomes way into the future. They know things are going to happen, and they can read weird in such a way that they can predict quite a ways out. It all depends on the person and the medium and how they do it, but it's all reading weird. That's what it ends up being, using your own gifts, your own insight to read weird. So I don't use spreads. I don't like the formal codification of the system. It doesn't speak to me. The runes speak to me because they, while they are a codification system, they're the alphabet, phonetic alphabet. But while they can serve as a codification of ideals and whatnot, they're not set in stone as far as the meanings go. Even the old rune poems kind of get a little janky on what the different meanings can be. I highly recommend, if you're going to get to know the runes, that you read absolutely everybody that you can, except for Ralph Bloom. Never read anything by Ralph Bloom. He created the rune book and put it out with a set of plastic runes. He's the guy that created the Blank Rune. There's no such thing as the Blank Rune, okay? It's bullshit. Pardon the S-bomb, but yes. Ralph is... No, don't go to his stuff, all right? Ralph Bloom does not know what he's talking about when it comes to the runes. Some of the interpretations that he pulls have some, some commonalities with other accepted interpretations of the runes. But by virtue of the introduction of a Blank Rune, he proves that he does not understand what runes actually are. We're going to come back to that here in a minute, okay? Why the Blank Rune cannot exist. But I don't use spreads. I do castings. I literally grab a handful of runes, I don't count them, and I throw them out. And I look at patterns that they fall in. I look at their relationship to one another. I look at what the runes mean. I look for patterns in the way that they fall. Do the lots themselves actually form additional runes? Does it take on a tree-like form naturally? Does it take on some longer, more spread out form? Are there clusters? Because I find the clusters will show interactions of energies and forces that you would not normally see in a more codified official spread. So, to truly let my mind and my pattern recognition do what it needs to do, I let the runes fall where they may. And I do not force that into a codified, laid out system. I let it go where it's going to go. I look at the runes, and then I trust my gut. And I will talk myself through it. I will logic my way through what I'm seeing, where these things interact. And I don't usually do it all at once. I don't just take the box and go, shook, and all the runes are out. No, I'll throw it out in phases because I watch it grow. I watch it develop. I watch it organically become what it's going to become. But I cast them all. I don't do like a 5-rune spread or a 6-rune spread no. I cast them all because all of these energies are at work all the time. Anyway, I need to know where they are. I don't want to leave something in the box and leave something unseen that I might need to see. So eventually they all make it out there, and I interpret how I need to interpret. But it's on the fly, which is why the organic nature of the way that I do the runes is why it's difficult for me to sit down and say, yes, I'm going to do rune videos on interpretation and all of this stuff, because it's in flux. It's a weird thing, The rune videos, I will probably do bunches of runes in one video because it's going to be shorter after fashion, because I can give you some generalities, but mostly it's to encourage you to get to know the runes themselves. So, this gives you an idea of how I approach the runes as a divinatory system and kind of my approach to the use thereof. Let me talk a little bit about some of the specifics with regards to what make the runes what they are, okay? This is the woo-woo side of things that I can lose some people on, but okay, here we go. symbols only have the power that we project into them. A symbol by itself, without context, is a scribble. It is meaningless. It is lines on a piece of paper. It is a scratch in a stone. It is indecipherable from anything naturally occurring in the world until it is given context. A symbol is a mark that is made consciously and willfully with the purpose specifically to relate information. Whether that information be a sound, an image, an ideal, a feeling, whatever it may be, that image of the symbol is meant to communicate that to the viewer. Basics of communication. There has to be an originator and a receiver and a message, mode of transportation for that. So, idea has to be codified into a form, transitioned across, which is it's put into the rune. The rune is then given to a medium that can then be interpreted by the person on the other side. Common context gives the image the interpreted meaning on the other side. So, runes themselves are just scribbles on a piece of paper. Runes themselves are letters. Runes themselves are etchings in a stone. They're nothing by themselves until we give them something. Because the power of the rune doesn't come from the rune itself. It comes from the psychic energies imbued from the individual viewing and working with the rune. It comes from the will of the person that is carving the rune in the first place. The purposeful, mindful action of creating this rune with the intent of carrying this information or this energy to the other side. A binding rune is created with the intent to bind something. That intention is put in there. That's the store of energy. The first set of energy that is given to a rune, to any symbol, is at the point of creation. The creator imbues this with the intended energies. Every person that views it thereafter, in their connection with this, reinforces that or counteracts that, depending on the energies that they feed into this symbol. Let's take a well-known symbol that I don't care how well you frame it, I don't care how well you set it up, you are going to have problems using this symbol in the modern society. And I'm going to explain to you why. Okay? And that is the filfot, or the swastika, sun wheel, however you want to look at it. The swastika, because that's the name that comes to mind after World War II, filfot for some others that go back further. And then, of course, there's the whole Tibetan side. And I get it. The symbol is ancient, and it goes far beyond what is simply the most recent negative impact. But this symbol was created with an intention originally. And those intentions varied depending on culture and the common use. The more people that viewed it and interpreted it, accepting that it meant this thing, like it represented the sun, it represented victory, it represented cyclical return, whatever it is that was associated with this symbol, the more times it was viewed, and the more times it was viewed as meaning that, the more it reinforced those energies in that symbol. Okay? So, fast forward to the 1940s and 30s and 40s, growth of the Nazi movement over in Germany, the use of the swastika as well as a number of our runes from amongst the Nazi Party for their purposes, misinterpretations, misassociations, and a tainting of negative energy. They did not use the swastika to mean vile things. They meant to use it as a symbol of their movement. That's what it meant to mean. It was meant to mean for them. We know their movement to have been a vile and evil thing. And therefore we associate that symbol to mean their movement, and we feed in that negative energy of seeing that and going, oh, Nazis, bad symbol. Feed that in enough times across such a large, because I mean, you talk about these symbols in the olden days, and you're talking about a culture here, a culture there. You are talking about a moment in time, a fixed point in weird, wherein this symbol was viewed by the entire world. And it has been poisoned. And so that's not to say that the symbol can't be cleansed, can't be reused, but anytime you use it, even if you have a well-educated group who understand why you were using it, the context for why you were using it, it still bears the taint of the psychic energies that have been poured into it by an entire world viewing it either with pride or hatred and anguish, but all centering around this conflict. And so that's the essence of symbols. They carry the weight of the psychic energies put into them. They evoke that in the viewer. So the symbol itself doesn't even bear the power so much as it brings the power forth out of the human mind, out of the blessings of the gods and goddesses that they have given us. Now this brings me back to the Blank Rune, which was introduced by Ralph Bloom in his book, the Book of Runes, or whatever that toiletry is titled. Yes, I hate that book. And there can be no Blank Rune. Here's the reason why. He can say that it represents Odin speaking to Balder on the funeral pyre, whatever. It's all made up. He plugged it in there. But the Blank Rune is not a blank rune. It is the absence of a rune on a blank lot. A blank lot carries no association unless you force an association there on it, at which point the lot itself becomes the symbol, not the rune itself. There's no such thing as a blank rune because the rune is the symbol. Blank rune means the absence of a rune, and the blank symbol. So anyway, the gist is that's a thing that was added for marketing because it was easier to pump out 25 lots, made a nice easy layout in the box, 5x5. It was easy for him, you know. So, which I don't get because 24 is an easily divisible number, but whatever. They threw in a blank lot, and it the blank lot can be used as a backup if you happen to lose one. One thing that I will do if I'm using one of the pre-made sets that comes with a blank rune is sometimes I will carry that blank lot in my pocket and handle it a lot in order to familiarize myself with the material, the weight, the feel of that particular set. The intention, of course, being to build a connection with the materials themselves so that that conduit is more easy to form when I actually sit down and do the rune reading itself. So, anyway, I've rambled on now for about 20 minutes or so on the essence of symbols and runes, and so I promised you guys I would introduce you to my rune set. So I'm going to do that real quick here. I'm going to change the camera angle. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this works out okay. And I'm going to show you a set that I made and kind of how it came into being. After that, the video is going to fade out. I'm not going to do the ending spiel. You know all the contact information is down below. Grab it, fill it out. Contact me however you want. If you got questions, jump in there. If you feel like lambasting me, go ahead. The more subscribers I get, the harder it is for me to get back to everybody that comments, but I try to at least hit like or reply where I can. Okay, anyway, so we're going to jump over to the rune set now, let you guys see it, tell a little bit of its story, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, look in the future for the subsequent videos wherein I will go into some of the details on how I interpret the runes, and I may even give a demonstration on the generality of how I might go about a rune reading. I'm not going to do an actual rune reading on the air. Same reason I won't do other rituals on the air. But I can at least throw the runes out on a blanket and be able to show you kind of the process that I go through. But without initiating intent, it's not actually going to be a rune reading. So just kind of give you an idea of how I would go about it. Okay, so anyway, without any further ado, we're going to cut over to the rune set. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you in a second. Okay, guys, forgive, this was actually more difficult to set up than it looks like. I do not have sufficient equipment in my office to get a decent downward facing shot. My tripod setup is a little bit more perpendicular. It's good for uprights. So what I'd like to show you guys is this is the box that I keep my runes in. This is something that I picked up at a Renaissance fair years ago. I very much like it. You can see the whole Viking style wolf artwork on the top, very symbolic for Odin for me. And the wholeness of the box is very simple, basic hinges, little flip latch right there, which we'll use to open up here in just a second. And then inside you will find my rune set. So these are my runes, okay? And let me tell you a little bit about these runes. You'll notice the shape of my runes is somewhat unusual. They take almost a diamond-esque look to them, an oval type shape in many cases, and I will tell you that largely this is due to what they are made of. Okay, this originally, the set was a bokken. If you're not familiar with what a bokken is a wooden training sword used in kendo and other Japanese martial arts. It is roughly katana-like in shape and is often of a hardwood, oak or a reddish wood of some kind, depending on where it was manufactured, how authentic it is, things like that vary as to the actual wood material itself. Now, I do not know all of the details pertaining to the wood in use here, and this is not the natural look of the wood. It's been gone over with a couple of different oils over the years, so it's taken on its rather walnutty looking shape, but it's not a walnut, I don't believe. It was more reddish in nature when I first worked on it. Anyway, the gist is this bokken was used by some dear friends of mine, and they trained with this sword all throughout their childhood, and then they gave it to their kids. And one day, their kids, because I was a Ren rat, I ran around Ren fairs a lot, and so my dear friends, brothers in drumming, were their kids were playing with this bokken, and they ended up breaking it. Which, if you know anything about bokken, you know how difficult it is to break a bokken. This thing was easily 20-30 years old, and these kids finally broke it in half. So they brought this bokken to me and said, Eric, we know that you, above all else, would be able to do something with this. And I took one look at this bokken and immediately knew what I wanted to do with it. And what I wanted to do with it was to create my rune set. Now, I've worked with other rune sets before, but these other rune sets were not of my creation. This was my masterpiece. This was the one where I finally went through and created my own runes for my own use. So I took this bokken and by hand cut all of these lots, which is why they are in irregular shapes and sizes, because I did this all by hand, and so they would come out somewhat different, which is fine, because I don't go through and actively try to memorize the shape and size of each lot. I could, and that would affect the outcome of some of my reads, but not really, because I don't use a spread, like I said before in my video. If I were to use a spread where each position of the runes in a read means a specific thing, then yes, the weight, the size, all of that would make it to where as I reach in to pull out a rune to answer a question, that would obviously give me an indicator as to which rune I was pulling out. But I do castings wherein I will reach out and grab a full handful and out it goes. So the exact size and weight is not important because in the casting out, I'm not taking the time to weigh them, nor am I controlling where they end up. so it doesn't have any actual feed into any impact on the runes and where they land. Now, like I said, I carved all of these by hand. So I cut the lots. I used an X-Acto knife and sandpaper, so I can get a good, decent go there. And with knife, I rounded all my edges, sanded down all of the finish off the outside, smoothed the faces, and then I burned the runes in them. And in carving these runes, my hand slipped one day. I even remember where I was and when this happened. And my hand slipped with the X-Acto knife and scored open my thumb. You can't really see it because it healed ages ago. This is an old set. So, but I immediately started bleeding. And I started bleeding quite a bit. And that was when I knew that, I had debated on whether or not I would blood my runes. Not certain as to how I felt about that particular practice. But at that moment I knew that it was time, and I knew that, the runes called for blood. So I blooded each of my runes. Kept the bleeding going for a while, and went through on each individual rune lot and blooded them all in one go. So it worked. It worked well. And I've gotten to really know these runes over time. I go through every once in a while, and I hit them with a different oil. It just depends on which oil I want at the time. I think the last time I did an oil on these was linseed oil. And the oils worked out pretty well. And I very much love this set. For people that want to study and learn the runes and do their own runic workings, I will tell you that nothing beats creating your own set as far as all that goes. I'm not going to pick that back up. I'm working with a narrow window here because, like I said, I don't really have a decent setup for all of a downward angle. So anyway, what you will find in all of this is that creating your own rune set is the most effective way to build a connection with the runes, to have some kind of meaning, some kind of purpose to them, a deeper connection to them. You'll find they just work better. And honestly, I would say that as we go into the interpretations and things like that, you will find spending time meditating on and thinking upon the runes works better when you have physical hands-on with the runes. Sorry, they keep wanting to slide off onto the table. So, there you have it, guys. This is my rune set. It was an old boken, gifted to me by some friends after their kids broke it. And I sanded it down, whittled it down, finished it, put the runes on it, blooded it, and here they are. I've used them for a number of readings. I can think of at least one of my viewers I have done a reading for in the recent past, and it's a thing. So, again, I will come through and do some work on interpretations, things like that for you guys in future videos, and we will talk more about some of the particulars on what the runes mean, and I will show you kind of what I mean in general by doing a casting. But for today, that's going to wrap it up. There's only so much I can do from this particular camera angle, so I'm going to go back to the drawing board and figure out a better way to do this. But in the meantime, here you go, guys. This is my rune set. Hope you guys liked it, and I look forward to hearing feedback from you guys and seeing where this rune series goes. Please do give me feedback. Let me know what you guys want to see out of the rune set, and we'll go from there. So, hail. Thank you, guys. May your ancestors smile upon you, and may you have a good day. Thanks.